Why reasonable parent time often turns into unnecessary conflict. One of the most common phrases you hear in divorce and child custody disputes is this: "We'll just work it out." Parents often believe vague terms like reasonable parent time sound cooperative, mature, and flexible. And to be fair, those agreements usually come from understandable motives. People are emotionally exhausted. They want to avoid more conflict. They do not want to look rigid or controlling. Some parents think detailed schedules feel cold or distrustful. The problem is that vague parenting plans usually work only while everybody remains cooperative, emotionally stable, and willing to compromise. Once these conditions change, the problems begin. A parenting plan is not supposed to be a casual understanding built upon optimism and goodwill. It is a court order. It is supposed to continue functioning when communication breaks down and when resentment builds, and when life becomes inconvenient. That is precisely when vague language starts creating problems. Reasonable parent time has no fixed legal definition. One parent may think reasonable means frequent and flexible contact. The other may think it means whatever fits around work schedules, sports, vacations, or convenience. At first, things may seem fine, then somebody starts arriving late, somebody starts canceling visits at the last minute, somebody decides that the child is too busy. Holidays become annual arguments because nobody clearly defined exchange times or who gets priority when schedules overlap. Summer vacations become disputes over notice requirements and scheduling authority. Children's extracurricular activities start becoming leverage, and now the parents are back in court fighting about expectations that should have been clearly addressed from the beginning. One of the biggest practical problems with vague parenting plans is enforceability. Courts cannot effectively enforce ambiguity. If an order simply requires reasonable visitation, there may be no objectively measurable violation when one parent begins restricting access or constantly changing schedules. The more vague the order becomes, the harder enforcement becomes. And when enforcement becomes difficult, conflict usually increases. Utah courts generally prefer structure for a reason. Specificity reduces opportunities for misunderstanding, selective memory, manipulation, and strategic reinterpretation. The specific is enforceable. Vague plans are not. Clear schedules also benefit children. Children generally do better when routines are predictable and expectations are stable. That does not mean every family needs a rigid military-style schedule, but children usually benefit from knowing where they will be when exchanges happen and what holiday and school schedules look like. A strong parenting plan usually addresses practical details like weekly schedules, exact exchange times, holiday allocations, transportation responsibilities, notice requirements, and make-up parent time. Some people hear that and think it sounds overly detailed. Usually it is not. In reality, it is usually far less expensive and far less painful to address these issues clearly at the beginning than to litigate them repeatedly later. Specificity is not about control. It is about clarity. No parenting plan eliminates every disagreement, but ambiguity rarely preserves peace as often as people hope it will. More often, it simply postpones conflict until resentment is deeper and cost of fixing the problem is much higher.